that that's over with, let's get into it. This one is gonna be crazy. So the Drugs and Narcotics Iceberg covers a little more than 100 items. I'm gonna throw it up right here so you guys can see it. It's also pinned in the description. But if you guys don't know what an iceberg is, it's basically a list of items on a topic, range from most known to least known. So basically for this iceberg, it's gonna be on the top, things like caffeine on the first tier, and then on the bottom, it's gonna be like a drug like reindeer urine on the 10th tier. Yeah, almost every single one of these drugs I've not tried personally, so I'm gonna be basing this off of research and first-hand accounts, so don't butcher me in the comments if, I don't get it 100% right, if you know what it is. All right, so tier 1 has the most basic of them all. You probably have tried them. Starting with number 1, heroin. No, I'm kidding, we'll get to that. Number 1 starts with nicotine. Nicotine is a highly addictive chemical. It's found in tobacco products. It could come in a cigarette, a cigar, vapes. About a fifth of the population uses tobacco/nicotine products. How it works, it releases dopamine to the brain when you take a hit of the nicotine, which releases, instant gratification. You're gonna feel like a buzz feeling in your head. The release of adrenaline from your brain causes the buzz feeling and gives you a little bit more energy that you feel. Next up is alcohol. Alcohol is usually in drink form, coming from ethanol. Almost all cultures have, some sort of alcohol in there. 85% of people worldwide drink alcohol. It's the number 1 drug. The ethanol from alcohol is absorbed into the stomach and then brought to your brain receptors once the ethanol is absorbed, which slows down all the systems in your brain, making you more dizzy, basically, slower reaction time. These slowed down receptors, make you feel a little bit more relaxed, which makes it a really popular drug. Too much, however, can cause your, heart to shut down, which is dangerous. You will die. Estimated about 21 shots is life-threatening. Next up is caffeine, also one of the most popular drugs found mostly in coffee, sourced from coffee beans. We all know what caffeine is, it makes your body more stimulated, you feel more awake, most of your body functions is higher, your heart rate is beating faster, making you more awake. Used most commonly in our favorite drink, coffee, but found in sodas, caffeine drinks, our favorite bangs. Caffeine is absorbed in the stomach and is considered a stimulant, which stimulates your body, increasing heart rate, making your whole body feel like it's more energized. You feel a little bit more happy. It's an addicting drug as well. Next up is ibuprofen, another commonly used drug used for pain. Created back in the 60s as a replacement to aspirin, making it, a more effective pain reliever. Ibuprofen works by blocking the pain receptors, making everything less painful, less inflammatory, less straight up pain, and fever. It helps with fevers. Paracetamol is one of the last ones on this tier and is also a pain reliever. It is made for relieving pain and fevers and slightly decreases body temp, but seen as inferior to ibuprofen. Paracetamol, however, causes liver damage in high quantities, making it the foremost cause for acute liver failure. Crap, I almost forgot weed. Weed is the most common illicit drug in North America. It's been criminalized for years on years, and just now, in the 21st century, it's starting to get decriminalized around the country. Weed is a street name for cannabis, coming from the cannabinoids that come into your system when you smoke it. The cannabinoids make your systems feel slower, and similar to alcohol, you feel more relaxed, but it's a little different. Weed initially came from South Asia. Now it's everywhere. It grows as a normal plant, but there's buds that come off, which is the weed that you break smoke off. Next up is tier 2, covers these 11. Definitely more dangerous, more addictive. You probably know these ones, but let's go. Cocaine, also known as crack, blow, chach, comes from the coca plant. The coca plant is where cocaine is extracted and has 2 different types of species. Cocaine has 2 different types of forms. It has its white powder form known as cocaine, and then It's thicker, harder substance that can be smoked, which is called crack. Both have the same effects on you. Mental effects of crack and cocaine are increased feelings of energy, euphoria, arousal, and general alertness. Physical effects of cocaine and crack are feeling sweaty, increased heart rate, and general feelings of alertness. You know, you're going to be like very jittery. Cocaine comes from indigenous people of South America in about 1500s that used to chew on the coca leaves and would get similar effects of cocaine when chewing it. Cocaine was isolated from its coca plant from Albert Niemann and named it cocaine from its plant coca. Angelo Marini had found the effects of cocaine and had put it in a wine so that people could drink. You know, they're sipping cocaine. The wine itself was called Vin Marini, which had 6 milligrams of cocaine in it. Coca-Cola's founder wanted to make a non-alcoholic version of this Vin Marini that also had like a little bit of coca leaves in it, which is where the Coca-Cola used to have Coke in it came from. Cocaine has a very strong and quick high lasting around 5 to 90 minutes, which makes it very, very addictive. Next up is Xanax, known as Xannies, school buses, yellow boys, you know, a bunch of things. It is a prescribed medicine that has a feeling of sedation and overall tiredness. It's mostly used for treatments of anxiety, depression. Effects occur within 1 to 2 hours, making it a very slow come up to what you feel. Xanax was first produced by the pharmaceutical company Upjohn, which is now a part of our favorite vaccine maker, Pfizer. Xanax's potency and physical dependence makes it very easily to get addicted to, making it a very popular prescribed drug. The number one prescribed drug. The overdose of Xanax is usually found when it is mixed with other types of drugs. You know, the most popular one, Xanax, is mixed with alcohol, making it a very fatal dose. Lysergic acid dethalamide, also known as LSD, but commonly known as acid, is a very popular psychedelic drug. LSD absolutely flips your perception. You know, you have a range of weird, different thoughts. At a certain amount of dose, it depends on the person, you start to see hallucinations. You know, you start to see things that aren't really there. We'll get into a little bit more. LSD has a fairly low potential to be addicted towards because it's such a high tolerance to it the more you use it. So you need a higher and higher dose every time to get the same effect, which is common among psychedelics. Found out all of the effects of it. He was absolutely mind blown. After putting out all of the effects of it to the world, the CIA had bought up all of the LSD in the world. The CIA had started doing tests with the LSD in its infamous MK Ultra projects. There's so much to this, I want to go into it a little more, but basically they had given LSD to CIA agents, people with mental disorders, you know, random people they bring in from colleges or whatnot, and had gave them LSD to try and figured out the effects by, you know, interrogating them, see if it could break them. It's nuts. Next up is mushrooms, the psychedelic kind. The effects come from psilocybin, which is in 200 plus types of fungi. Psilocybin itself is not psychedelic, but once ingested by the body, it is changed into psilocin. Similarly to LSD, you get a feeling of hallucinations, loss of time, general feelings of euphoria. They're very similar. The isolation of psilocybin from mushrooms comes from our favorite guy, Albert Hoffman, who accidentally found LSD. So he found this one too. He's a psychedelic guy. These psychoactive mushrooms have been around for years and have been ingested by people for years. In Mexico, there are the mushroom Mayan stones, which these are really interesting to me. They're basically stones of mushrooms with people's face on it. In 1966, there was an amendment to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that had made mushrooms illegal to sell, ingest, all that. And years following it, they had stopped research on it, which was detrimental. This stuff was actually helping people. Morphine is next up and is a pain medication known as an opiate coming from the poppy plant. It can be taken orally, inhaled, injected, and also anally. I learned that, so now you know too. It is mostly used for heart attacks, women going into labor, and any other type of chronic pain that you may feel. Morphine was discovered and isolated from the poppy plant by Albert Serturner in 1804. A couple years later, in 1817, he had tested it on 3 boys, himself, a dog, and a mouse, and almost all of them died from this experimental drug. I don't know why the hell. Next up is amphetamine, which is the parent to methamphetamine and other types of amphetamines. But amphetamine itself is used for ADHD, depression, and nasal congestion. Amphetamine stimulates the dopamine release in the brain, making it a body and mind enhancer. You get intense feelings of happiness, energy, and more brain function, making it a very addictive drug. Amphetamine comes from the plant ephedra, which contains the stimulant ephedrine. It was used dated back to 5,000 years ago in China. Synthesized by Lazar Edelenu, who later made methamphetamine, but it was not used again until 1933, where it was put into inhalers. And used again in World War II by both sides, the Axis allies, where they had wanted to stimulate their soldiers after prolonged time in combat. Next up is opium, which is also known as poppy tears and is extracted from the poppy seed. Known seeds of opium come from the Stone Age, 5000 BC, where it was used for either food or rituals. In Mesopotamia in 3400 BC, it was known as the joy plant. They were definitely using that. It's used for many of the other drugs that are in this list, so I'm gonna hold off. MDMA, known more commonly as Molly, but also known as ecstasy, XTC. Who comes up with these names? MDMA Molly is a psychoactive that causes changes in your mood, sensations. You could also get hallucinations. They can experience a massive energy boost and are more sociable with others. You know, they're easier to talk to, I guess. I don't understand it. I never took it. Begin within 30 to 45 minutes and lasts between 3 and 6 hours, making it one of the longer lasting drugs, but there are longer. Serotonin and dopamine that is released into your brain, like many of these other drugs, making it a mood booster. Very popular party drug in the US, and it is estimated that around 2 million pills are smuggled into the US daily. In 1912, Anton Kalish had patented and synthesized MDMA, but had no clue of the effects on the human body. Research went by until Alexander Shoglin had sent the instructions to make MDMA to a random chemical company, and shortly after in Chicago there's a surge of people using MDMA and getting high. So that company had basically cracked the code on MDMA and started selling it to the public. Then had tried it himself and found the effects and was very interested. In the 70s and 80s, it was a massively popular drug that was dished out until it was banned completely. The meth, full name methamphetamine, is a stimulant that acts on the central nervous system, affecting most parts of your body. Used almost always recreationally in powder or crystal form, and it functions very similarly to amphetamine, but it is much more potent and addictive. It can be swallowed, smoked, snorted, etc. It releases so much dopamine that it blocks the receptors that is supposed to regulate the dopamine, making it super potent, super addictive. It stimulates the brain due to the dopamine release, making you more alert and mindful. Basically, not really mindful, less mindful. Continued use of meth leads to much weight loss due to sweating and whatnot. Your whole body is being worked excessively. It causes meth mouth, where you grind your teeth when you're using it, so it really messes up your teeth, and also dry mouth when you use it, so it's really going to get infected. Messes with your sleep. You're not going to be able to sleep as well, and your mood is going to be overall messed up because your brain is being fried. Overdose is very common due to the overstimulus of your body, leading to heart attacks, strokes, organ failure, seizures. No treatment for addiction is available except for psychological cognitive therapy. It was discovered by Lazar Edelenu, who had also discovered amphetamine. couple items back. 1893, a Japanese scientist had figured out methamphetamine from the drug ephedrine, which had a very similar structure. Germany had marketed meth in their country known as Pervitin, and it was used by armed forces in the Third Reich, which was under Hitler. You know, these terrible men were on meth. Next, it is also coming from amphetamine, specifically amphetamine salts. It's prescribed mostly for ADHD patients who have a lack of dopamine, and when they get Adderall, they're able to get their dopamine and they're not constantly searching for something to give them dopamine. Helps with repetitive learning tasks, so it is very popular with college students trying to study for an exam, get homework done, etc. It is shown that 30% of college students have tried Adderall. Use of Adderall decreases the amount of serotonin and dopamine that is released in your brain, making for it to become very addictive, where you need to keep on using it to keep your levels of dopamine up. Started from this drug Opiates, which was made to decrease people's weight. Taken off of the market because of the newly found FDA. It then had taken out the 2 molecules of methamphetamine that was in it and replaced it. Replaced with dextroamphetamine, another amphetamine. I don't know how they pulled that off, and it was able to go back on the market. In 1994, there was a rebranding of Opiates, and it was named Adderall, coming from their slogan, ADD for all. Heroin is up, we're finally here. It is coming from diacetylmorphine and diamorphine. It is an opioid used for recreational use, coming from morphine. It in 1898 by the Bayer Company and was used to treat tuberculosis and morphine addiction. They use a drug to treat another drug. It is also made from poppy flowers because it is an opiate, so it's just added with more chemicals to make it heroin. 0.1 grams costs about $20, so an actual addict of heroin is going to be paying around like $100 to $200 a day to keep it up. It's nuts. I don't know how. It is usually taken through a needle, which you usually see it depicted as. It could also be snorted or smoked though. Feeling of euphoria throughout the body, dry mouth, drowsiness, and impaired function overall. A very addictive drug that when you inject it, it's gonna instantly hit your body and it's gonna last a couple hours, making it super addictive. Long-term use of heroin causes deterioration in the brain. Deterioration in the brain is hard to be revoked. So once you try it and mess up your brain, you're screwed. It's not fun at all. This is one of the worst. No, there are worse. It causes around like 70,000 deaths a year in the US. So it's pretty bad. Please do not try any of these harder drugs. They are so addictive and will really ruin your life. It's only going to get crazier as we go further down, but I really like to talk about this stuff, and if you listen to this far, you probably like it too. So consider leaving a like, a follow. My first video is at 15 likes, so I'm going to say double the likes of my first video, which is at 15 at this moment, so 30, and I'll do part 2. I appreciate any of you guys watching, and have a good one.